Hi, you guys. Abigail went home today, and I'm feeling all kind of at sixes and sevens about it. I really miss her when we part to go back to our own lives after having some really fun days together. So, yeah. So I just want to come on and yap a little bit. My friend Leanne, our friend Leanne, um, got through her surgery just fine. She had to have some rather extensive surgery on her jaw that was really scaring her for a lot of reasons, and she got through it okay, and God bless her heart, she's home resting as far as I know. So thanks for all your prayers and thoughts and lit candles and crossed fingers and whatever else you did to throw some good vibes her way. I know she appreciates it. There were a few things I didn't show you from my Tuesday morning haul. I wanted to get those out of the way. I got some more napkins. Even though I haven't worked on scrapbooks, I know I'm going to get back to it. So anytime I see something cool that I can use for a scrapbook that's not expensive, I grab it. This is one thing that I got. It's napkin, a big dinner size napkin with some really marvelous artwork on it, kind of Parisian looking in nature, and this is the size that it is. I mean, it's real big, so you could do a lot of stuff with it. So I got that one, and then this is a cocktail napkin, and all the panels, there are 4 panels, and they're all pretty much the same, that has, the stamps and the butterfly and other kind of botanical looking drawings on it. I thought that was cool. And then another one that's set like that with 4 identical panels is this. It says Farmer's Market, and it has the beautiful rooster and some flowers and writing and stuff like that. I thought it was really neat. Although I haven't really gotten into, Mallory's over here trying to chew up my stuff. Mallory, don't you be chewing my stuff. Silly dog. Anyway, I haven't really gotten into stamping. I don't really know how to do it. I mean, I've faked it a little bit, but I found this Tim Holtz. I'm going to take it out of the package. I think I saw What Up Myrna, Angela on What Up Myrna has used these stamps a lot, I think, and it's the ruler and the zigzag and kind of the sewing sort of thing. And the little quote one says, experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. I agree with that completely. And then I found this, which was really neat. These are stamps that they're small in size, so they would be for, corners of things or smaller projects. But they are Art Nouveau looking. There's an Art Nouveau lady, right here. And then this says Mystique. And then there's kind of this botanical thing. This one up at the top, what is that one? I can't really tell what the dark one is. I can't really tell what this is. It might be a gramophone, then another flower, and then this is kind of like a postage stamp sort of thing. So I really liked this one that's Art Nouveau looking because that was the name of my store. Back when I had a clothing store back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the name of my store was Nouveau. And there wasn't anything Art Nouveau about it, but I just liked the name. And I like one-word names that are easy to remember and, which you don't hear all the time. And back then you didn't hear the word nouveau hardly at all. And I sold, I'll have to do a video on this someday, but I sold clothing and jewelry that I either altered or I made myself. I'd go down to LA a lot and buy clothing, like blank clothing, and then bring it back and we'd paint it and put beads on it and stuff. It was really fun. My friend Jackie worked in that store with me. It was great. So anyway, this Art Nouveau style kind of reminds me of that. What else do I want to say? what I want to say. I have my little book, my little big book, with my ideas of things to talk about. You guys do that too, huh? You have a book that you write things in, and then look through it and try to figure out what in the world am I going to talk about next. And almost every one of them requires like either some deep thought or audio visual aids or something. None of which I have right now. Oh, I know what I want to talk about. All right. Since we're kind of on the topic of art, this is in some ways a sort of a response to you, Jude, because you were talking about art and the process of creating art, and specifically the quest we all have for our own voice, our own authentic style that brands us as who we are. Mary Englebright has it. Thomas Kincaid, whose work I don't like, but he has that kind of branded style. Debbie Mumm from the 1980s, she did a lot of houseware design. She has it. Betsy Johnson has it. And I want it, and you want it, and all artists want to find that place where they're not just mimicking somebody else, but they've incorporated all of their influences into their own kind of reborn style. And I've had a couple of interesting experiences that speak to that. One of them happened back when I was in my early 20s. I had a friend named Rachel. Rachel is still my friend. We went to high school together. She ended up teaching English classes. Anyway, she's an English teacher. Advanced English teacher in high school. Anyway, she was doing house sitting for this guy who was a local artist, lived in Fresno, and nationally, and well, probably internationally known artist. Back when I was 20, his work was selling for $700 to $1,400. That was what it was selling for. Now he's gone, and of course his work is untouchable. I couldn't afford to buy it now. I couldn't afford then, but I really couldn't afford it now. Anyway, she was house sitting for this guy, and I came over one afternoon, hang out with her. He was off in England painting Stonehenge. He was doing a series of works that were influenced by that whole Salisbury Plain area of England. Anyway, so we're sitting around in this guy's super cool mid-century house with all the 1960s Danish modern furniture, and it was so cool. It was like something off of Mad Men. It was really, really neat. I mean, and that was the late 1970s, so his stuff was probably from the early 50s, mid-50s. It was neat. Anyway, we're sitting around talking, and all of a sudden, just sort of apropos of nothing, she says, come here. She says, I want to show you something. So we went into the big family room, and she pulled the couch away from the wall, and she pulls out a portfolio, you know, those big brown portfolios that expand. They're, accordion things that you put all your big watercolor paper works in. And there were a number of them behind the couch. She just pulled out one. Maybe there were 5 or something. I mean, it was about this thick, right, with portfolios. She pulls one out, and she says, look at this. She opened the portfolio, because it opens all the way, so the paintings are just lying there. Of course, they weren't framed. They're just watercolor paper. And she started to turn them over. And I'd look at one. She'd turn it over, and I'd look at the next one. She'd turn it over, and I'd look at the next one. And what I was looking at was this man's mistakes. He saved maybe all, but certainly a huge volume of ruined $20 a sheet Arches watercolor paper with ideas or works he was going somewhere with, and then he messed it up somehow. The colors were muddy, or there was something off in the placement, or maybe he just got tired of it, or who knows. I mean, some of them I could tell what was wrong. I knew why he had to stop. In others, I was clueless. I didn't know why he didn't continue. But there were so many mistakes that, you know, by the time I was done looking through the second portfolio, it was obvious that that's what he had done, is hold on to his mistakes. He probably had far more mistaken canvases than he had finished sold canvases. Well, they weren't canvases, but, you know, watercolor pieces. Watercolor, if you, and this is an aside, but if you don't know much about painting, watercolor is probably the most difficult medium. It looks easy, but it is so hard to make it turn out correctly. Particularly the more representational your subject matter is. In other words, the more realistic you want it to look, the harder it is to render that in watercolor than, say, oil, where you can scrape it all off and repaint, or acrylic, where you can just paint over it and redo it. You can't paint over watercolor. You can't fix it. So I mean, the hair on the back of my neck stood up as I was seeing all these failed attempts, all these hours and hours of work toward something that was probably just going to end up in the trash eventually. And it was a really good lesson, because here, you know, before I'd had the opportunity to see all this, I thought this guy was like not a god, but I mean, he was like, I really looked up to him. Everyone in town knew who he was, and, you know, my dad had taught his kids, and, you know, he just was, you know, kind of a local character. So I learned that no matter how perfect things appear, there's a whole lot of work that goes into making a perfect outcome of anything, whether it's writing or watercolors or Fabonichi journals, or, you know, making a dress or a quilt or a sweater. I mean, it can be so frustrating to have to repaint, rip something up, rip out stitches, whatever, just having to redo something over and over until you finally get into the zone of finishing it in a way that feels correctly done, you know, to you, the craftsperson or the artist. So that was a really important experience. No matter what a person, how their expression appears, there can be, it's like an iceberg. There's so much more underneath that supports what an artist shows to the world, what they create. Their lives, their influences, the things about their art that they felt bad about, the things that they've strived for, the stuff that they couldn't achieve. All of that sort of supports what you finally say as an artist. And it's real fascinating to see kind of behind the lines of that. As far as I'm concerned, in college I took I didn't take art appreciation, I took art history, which art history was probably the hardest class I ever took, and I was pre-med, okay? I did all the chemistry and the histology and the microbiology and calculus and all that stuff. That's what I was doing in college, but I go and take this art history class, and it just about killed me. We had so much we had to remember, and we had to remember it visually along with words behind the visuals. It was tough for me. Anyway, one of the things we did in this class was we had to choose an element from a classical painting we were given a certain number of eras to choose from, and we were to choose a painting and then choose an element in that painting and reproduce it, on canvas or on paper. I made the mistake of choosing my favorite Dutch master, who happens to be Vermeer. Yeah, I would have to choose one of the most difficult to replicate artists who has a very tiny body of work that is known in the world. And the one I chose was it's the marriage of somebody, and it's a man and a woman, and they're standing in a room, and you can see the reflection of the artist in a mirror. You can see him painting, and there's a big brass chandelier that's hanging above their heads. Well, I chose just a portion of that chandelier, and I studied that thing, and I studied that thing, and I read about Vermeer's techniques, and I tried to figure out how to do that, and I was woefully inadequate. I couldn't make that section of the painting look anything near to what it looked like in the original. That made me feel awful in a way, because I always had all sorts of confidence in my ability to paint or draw anything I wanted to. Well, I had then and have now so much to learn when it comes to technique, and I never at all put in the time to learn the technique, and I still haven't, and I probably won't. I don't know why. I guess I'm just not driven to do that anymore, and in part because there are so many other mediums for artistic expression now that are fairly easy to master, and you get a lot more immediate success, like the scrapbooking thing. And there's a learning curve on that as well. It absolutely has been for me. But I can tell that after, 6 months or a year of doing that, I'll pretty much have my own style figured out and know what I want to do. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on art and finding a voice. It's a complicated thing, and I, like you, Jude, I hope I find it in one medium or another, whether it's writing, which is what I've been doing mostly lately, or some sort of visual media, something. In some ways, what I'm doing right here with you is a very true voice for me, and it was hi Mama. It was a combination of creating my backdrop, figuring out my lighting, figuring out the camera angle that I liked, figuring out how close I want to be to you in the frame when I'm talking. All of that has given me a certain voice that is that's recognizable, and it's becoming more and more recognizable. When I see my own videos, I see a thread of continuity really beginning to build in there. So maybe video is my medium, I don't know. So anyhow, those are my thoughts tonight, and I hope everyone is doing well. Leanne, I hope you are in as very little pain as you can possibly be in, given what you've been going through. And everybody else, stay dry if you're in the rain, stay warm if you're in the snow, stay cool if you're in the heat like I am. I love you all, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.